able to tell stories. And David and I have a Magid training program where we train storytellers and Torah teachers. And part of our program is learning to tell tandem stories. That means two tellers telling one story. And in fact, both our Portland students and our Boulder students and our Ashland students, we've had a few programs. Right now we're doing Boulder and Ashland. We Skype in, I don't know if any of you have seen, Mark Novak and Renee Brackfield tell stories at Kala. Well, they're our tandem storyteller mavens, right? I mean, they're the experts. So, and Ayala Zonenchen, who you've met before, she's running this whole event. She runs the whole show. She actually runs David's life, not me. Ayala Zonenchen and Daniel Jokelson are going to tell the story of when Shlomiel went to Warsaw.
Though Shlomiel was a lazybones and a sleepyhead and hated to move, he always dreamed of traveling. But when he mentioned his dreams to his wife, Mrs. Shlomiel, she only said,
"Long journeys are not for a Shlomiel. You should just stay home and mind the children when I go to the market."
But he could not let go of his dreams. A recent visitor to Chelm had told Shlomiel of the city of Warsaw, the high buildings, the luxurious stores, the magnificent parkways.
So the next morning, when Mrs. Shlomiel went off to the market, Shlomiel gathered his children around him. He told the older ones to mind the younger ones, and then he went to the cupboard and got out some dark bread, a little onion, a few cloves of garlic, put it into a bundle and flung it over his shoulder and headed down the road. Now in Chelm, there's a street called Warsaw Street. Shlomiel believed this would be the way to the big city, so off he went. But before he actually left Chelm, he ran into one of his neighbors. Where are you going?"
I'm going to Warsaw.
What will you do there?"
What do I do in Chelm? Nothing.
Well, several hours down the road, stores gave way to pastures and fields, and Shlomiel began to grow quite tired. So he decided to have a nap by the side of the road. But then he had a thought.
When I wake up, I may not remember which is the way to Warsaw and which is the way to Chelm. I've got it. I will place my boots with the toes pointing to Warsaw.
Little did he know that across the road was a blacksmith who overheard every word he said to himself, and he watched him placing those boots in the direction of Warsaw. So when Shlomiel fell off to sleep, he snuck over very quietly so as not to awaken him. And he turned those boots back around in the direction of Chelm. Well, when Shlomiel awoke, he was rested but very hungry. He opened his bundle and he had some bread and some onion. Then he got on his boots and he headed down the road. But he suddenly started to notice that things were looking strangely familiar. The houses looked the same, even the people looked the same.
Is it possible I've come to another town? Excuse me, what is the name of this town?
Why, this is Chelm.
How is this possible? I walked away from Chelm. Ah, I've got it. There are two Chelms, and I've come to the second one. On the other hand, even if there are two Chelms, must they be exactly the same? On the other hand, my teacher, the head there at the school, told me the earth is the same everywhere. So why shouldn't they be the same?
Well, this discovery gave Schlemiel great satisfaction. He began to wonder if he would find a street just like his street, with a house on it just like his. Well, sure enough, a few minutes down the road, he came to an identical street with a house just like his. Night had fallen, and Schlemiel opened the door. There, to his amazement, was a second Mrs. Schlemiel and her children, who looked just like his. Everything in the house looked exactly like in his own household. Even the cat looked the same.
Mrs. Schlemiel began to scold him.
Oi, Schlemiel, where have you been? You left the house alone, and what's in that bundle?
Mrs. Schlemiel, I'm not your husband. Children, I'm not your papa.
Oi, have you lost your mind?
No, I come from Helm 1. This is Helm 2.
Schlemiel, what's the matter with you? You are in your own house. These are your own children. I am your own wife. Don't you recognize your own chickens?
No, I'm telling you. I was on my way to Warsaw. In between Helm 1 and Warsaw is Helm 2. That is where I am now. Tomorrow I continue on to Warsaw.
In that case, where is my husband?
How should I know where your husband is?
She sighed and shrugged and finished cooking Schlemiel's favorite meal, noodles and beans.
He may be crazy, but even a crazy man has to eat, right? Here.
Oh, Mrs. Schlemiel, you're a good woman. My wife would not feed a stranger. It seems that there is some small difference between the two Helms.
Oi!
Children, my wife is as like your mother as two peas. You are as like my children as drops of water. It's amazing.
It's not bad enough that he's a Schlemiel. Now he had to go crazy on top of it. What will I do? I can't leave the children alone with him. Who knows what he could do? Gott in Himmel, God in heaven, what did I do to deserve this?
Don't worry, Mrs. Schlemiel. Tomorrow I go to Warsaw. You be rid of me.
No, I can't let him run away. He'll disappear and I'll be a deserted wife without a Schlemiel.
So she took him to the house of Grunham the ox, the wise head elder of Helm. Word had traveled fast, and when they arrived, all the elders were gathered there, arguing.
Is it possible there are two Helms?
Oh, well, if there's two, why not 3, 4, even 100 helms?
Even if there are 100 Helms, must there be a Schlemiel in every one?
Grunham the ox, the head elder, was deep in thought. He listened carefully to Schlemiel, and when Schlemiel was done, he spoke.
Do you recognize me?
Yes, I recognize you. You are the wise Grunham the ox.
And in your helm, is there also a Grunham the ox?
Yes, there is a Grunham the ox, and he looks exactly like you.
Then in that case, isn't it possible that you left Helm,
Yes?
you turned around,
Yes?
and you came back to Helm?
No. Why should I turn around? I'm not a windmill.
That is the case. You cannot be this Mrs. Schlemiel's husband.
That's what I'm saying.
He must have left the day you arrived. We will have to wait for the real Schlemiel to come home, and then we will know who is who.
Mrs. Schlemiel screamed.
Oh, no, my Schlemiel has come home. I I don't need two Schlemiels. One is more than enough.
Whoever he is, he cannot live with you while we figure this out. He will have to go live in the poorhouse for now.
Oh, good God, what will I do with the children? I can't leave them alone with him. Who knows what he could do? Besides, I need a husband. Even a Schlemiel is better than no husband at all.
Are we to blame that Schlemiel went to Warsaw? Wait until he comes home.
Mrs. Schlemiel wept bitterly. The children cried too, but Schlemiel was touched.
How strange. It's in my house, my wife, she always scolded me. My children, they talked back to me. Here, a strange woman and her children want me to live with them. Maybe the Chelm 2 is actually better than the Chelm 1.
Well, we need someone to mind the children. Maybe we should hire him. After all, he looks so much like the real Schlemiel. The children will feel very much at home with him.
All the elders agreed this was a wise idea.
Only King Solomon could have thought of something so wise.
Only such a clever way out of this dilemma could have been thought of in our Chelm.
Well, what would you want to be paid to mind the children?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. 3 groschen a day.
Oi, 3 groschen a day! Idiot, moron! What is 3 groschen nowadays? You shouldn't take anything less than 6.
Ah! She pinches just like my wife.
Well, 3 groschen may be too little, but 6 groschen is too much. We shall pay you 5 groschen a day until the real Schlemiel comes home.
It was the first time that Mrs. Schlemiel had ever received any money for the household from Schlemiel. Now, when she was in a good mood, she'd say to him,
Oi, such a pity. Why didn't you think of going to Warsaw 10 years ago?
What, don't you miss your husband?
Well, what about you? Don't you miss your wife?
both agreed
They were quite happy with matters as they stood. After all,
All
the world is
one big
hell.
hell.